Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, as always, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is today we're going to make up for last week, which we missed, if you were not aware, because when we originally sat down to record on Saturday, there were some windstorms here in Arizona, and that basically was like knocking the power in and out all day. So we just didn't have power when Cam originally came by to record. So we were like, okay, we'll just record on Sunday instead. And then Cam was down sick on Sunday. So we ended up having to cancel last week. So instead, this week we'll be talking about what I would have covered last week, Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which I had just finished earlier in the day, Saturday of last week. Cameron has been playing Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers edition that was re-released on modern platforms a couple years ago. And then I have also jumped over and been playing a lot of 2 Point Museum, so I will share some thoughts on that game as well. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can, all that fun stuff. So yes, kicking things off with Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, or Pirate Yakuza, as I will probably always like just shorten it down to. This will be a largely spoiler-free conversation, and I don't think there's enough to warrant like a spoiler-free, and then let's talk about spoilers.
Sure.
Especially if you haven't played the game and all that stuff. But as I told you a little bit last week when we got together, since we didn't end up recording, if you are unfamiliar, this is effectively the latest Like a Dragon Gaiden game, meaning it's kind of a spin-off story in the Like a Dragon like storyline of things. I would liken this most directly to Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name from a couple years ago. This is very much a side story following Goro Majima. But this is also, following the events of Infinite Wealth. The most important things you need to know coming out of Infinite Wealth are that Infinite Wealth took place in Hawaii, and there was a small island off the kind of central part of Hawaii called Nele Island, which is where a lot of the pinnacle or climactic moments of the game occur, and this game picks up following the dissolution of the Yakuza in Japan, and now a lot of Yakuza are working on Nele Island, and that's how Majima kind of got thrown into working on Nele Island to help clean up radioactive waste, because in Infinite Wealth there's a whole subplot of people global entities sending their radioactive waste to Nele Island, where it was basically just being hoarded and disposed of, but not in any kind of proper fashion. It was just being thrown in in caves and stuff. So the Yakuza are there on Nele Island as a work effort to clean up. Majima kind of got sent there to oversee and help in that cleanup process, but at some point got caught up in a battle with a giant squid, and so the game picks up with him having lost his memory, washed up ashore, basically shipwrecked, and he's met by a young kid named Noah, who lives on this small island. It's called Rich Island, after the family that kind of lives there. Noah Rich, his dad Jason Rich, and it's basically a small little thing. It's basically the map for that island is a little seaport village, a fisherman village, and Jason's little bar that he runs, and Noah also lives there, kind of thing. So you're very quickly swept up into pirates also frequent this island and kind of harass Jason, and Majima basically deciding to stand up to these pirates, defeats them, takes over their ship. They all kind of identify and say, well, if you're Yakuza, you were probably here working on the Nele Island stuff. So they kind of set that out as the mission to get Majima to Nele Island. And yeah, basically Majima gets swept up in being a pirate captain, does eventually kind of get to Nele Island and run into former compatriots and stuff who kind of tell him who he is, who he was, but his memory doesn't really come back. So he just kind of still gets swept up in things. And the big, one of the big set pieces of this game is Madlantis, which is like a pirate, cove run by outlaws where you can have big giant ship battles. It's very much similar to the like arena ship island thing that was also in The Man Who Erased His Name. The combat there can also be very similar to that, but now with ship component stuff. So yeah, basically it's Majima as a pirate. It's a 5-chapter story, but there's plenty of things like when you get to chapter 2, like almost all of the mini games and stuff have opened up, so you can basically just do everything that you want to do in chapter 2. You can, you can compete in all the ship tournaments. You can go down like a side quests line of defeating these, pirate captains around the seas around Hawaii and stuff like that. What are you doing? You've got like all the mini games that the series just constantly has and all that stuff. It is an action combat game, not the turn-based combat of Like a Dragon Yakuza, or Yakuza Like a Dragon, or Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It's kind of a return to the classic style.
Right. I think that was I thought that was kind of implied when you said it's more of a Gaiden, like the Man Who Forgot His Name.
Yeah.
One.
Yep.
So sorry. Is it Man Who Forgot His Name?
Man Who Erased His Name.
Erased His Name. This one would be Man Who Forgot His Name.
It would, yeah. I think that was probably a tentative title for this game.
Oh, for sure,
before they landed on the idea of like, well, they're playing as Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Let's just call it that. But yeah, this is very much the Man Who Forgot His Name. In terms
it
of,
is exactly what it says on the tin. Like it is what it is on like
absolutely
book cover judged. You're good.
So in combat, Majima has 2 combat styles here. He has kind of his traditional Mad Dog, which is him fighting with his fists or his big long blade. They also have added into the mix that I don't recall from any of the previous games, but I also haven't played 5 and 6, so if it came up there, apologies. But in this one, it feels very much Spider-Man influenced because he can pop people up into the air and then you can do a little bit of aerial combat. So it feels very much a la the Spider-Man games. But then Majima also has Sea Dog Majima style combat where he goes full pirate garb, has a pair of cutlasses that he can throw out and like do boomerang attacks with them. Or he gets a pistol that he can, start blasting people. You eventually pick up a chain hook, which can be used for traversal, so you can like get to like the tops of roofs in Hawaii or other locations and stuff like that for exploration purposes. But in combat, it means you can launch the hook at somebody and basically immediately pull yourself to them. So it's a nice like close the distance kind of attack. And then each of those styles also has an ultimate ability that you can kind of build up over time. With Mad Dog Majima, the ultimate is like spectral doppelgangers pop out, and basically you have other Majimas fighting the other enemies on the field. And then for the Sea Dog Majima, the ultimate is tied to these cursed musical instruments that you pick up over the course of the campaign. And each musical instrument can invoke a new spirit of the seas, whether that's sharks that will just come in like out of the ground and just chomp the crap out of your enemies, or jellyfish that'll pop up and basically zap everybody and stun all the enemies. You also have a chimpanzee that'll come around and basically like a giant chimpanzee that is like taller than a human even, that will come around and just batter everybody. Or a parrot that will come in and fly, again, giant spectral parrot that will come in and fly through the battlefield. Story-wise, yeah, you get swept up in this whole pirate quest thing, and then there's, hidden treasure tied to, the locations herein, with like the mystical element being there's an elixir of life that can prolong people's lives or make them immortal, and they play around with that. But there's also just a shit ton of gold, and that's why everybody's after it. And that's kind of what all of the other forces in the game are after, is that treasure. You kind of get swept up in Madlantis is run by a couple of pirate, like a pirate king and queen. not married, just there's Queen Michelle, who's like a well-to-do upper crust woman from like high society who is almost cosplaying as a pirate queen for fun, basically. Like that seems to be kind of her vibe, is like she's plenty well off. She doesn't need pirate riches, but she has fun in Madlantis, kind of overseeing and controlling things. And then you have and Queen Michelle is played by Deborah Wilson, a storied gaming performer, as well as vocal and live action performer and stuff. I always think of her from Mad TV. But then you have King Raymond Law, played by Samoa Joe, which is a lot of fun as a wrestling fan, seeing him pop up and knowing how much of a fan he is of games. I have a picture of me, him, and Xavier Woods at E3 one year when the 1 year I went to E3.
That's so wild that you have that. It's crazy.
We were at a party and basically I got a picture with the two of them back when he was still in WWE and stuff. So yeah, seeing him like constantly in here and he ends up having like a big meaty. He is a big bad of the game, so like he's present throughout for that kind of stuff. So yeah, just a lot of fun like facing off against them. It is the wild things that you would expect from a Yakuza Like a Dragon game. Definitely kind of goes all sorts of those wild places, while also having at its core this like story about who your family is, whether that's found family in the case of Majima, finding and kind of taking in this boy Noah who saved his life on the beach, and basically everything he does in here is very much giving him a very paternal approach that I don't think he really has. Like, Kiryu has always been the one that has like the dad vibes, obviously going back to the very first game, whereas Majima has always been kind of just the wild and crazy, guy. And he's still very much the wild and crazy Majima in this too, even though he doesn't remember his past. He's still, again, immediately jumps into, I'm going to be a pirate. Yeah, let's do that. That'll be fun. But this one, he has like something to care for and a kid to give an adventure to and stuff like that. So it's a very heartfelt Majima story on that side of things, amidst the backdrop of insanity and crazy pirate stuff. I have a handful of other notes, but I'll take a break if you have any questions or want to go down any path in particular.
I do have several questions actually. Primarily, my questions are gonna be about the pirate ship combat.
Sure.
My preferred combat that I ever had on a pirate, like any pirate combat, comes from Black Flag Assassin's Creed.
Sure. That's really the only other reference point I can strongly point to.
Well, I would say Assassin's Creed 3 introduces ship-to-ship combat, but there's not that the thrill of like taking over a ship that Black Flag gives you. Mm-hmm. And so with this kind of a game, what is it like steering the ship? Like, is it like you're getting these quick turns? Is it more of like a slow ship-to-ship firing cannons type thing? Like, what's the deal?
It probably leans a little more slow into like part of it. I would have to really go back and like replay Assassin's Creed to really like it feels like how Assassin's Creed felt. I'll say that the combat, like you have a boost, so you can like for a limited time you can boost, and you have like a replenishing supply of boost that you can use, or you can pick up like fuel canisters in the water to refill your boost, and while you're boosting you can like drift, so you can make sharper quick turns if you need to like reposition your cannons and stuff. It's very much the same kind of like you've got left cannons, you've got right cannons.
Okay.
The things that Yakuza throws in the mix, I don't remember the first game. You can also ram ships as you could in Assassin's Creed. I don't remember Assassin's Creed having a front weapon. This one does. You have machine guns strapped to the front of your of your ship, so you can fire directly on. They are like in a straight line though. So if the opposing ship is coming in between those cannons, you're gonna miss them, or you can usually only get them with like one if they're coming straight on. But you can level up your machine guns, like the super powered like you can level up the machine guns themselves a few times with and this game very much goes back to the like you pretty much leveling up everything with money. So to level up your machine guns, you're pouring money into them. You also do need like there's another pirate influence currency that you're picking up as you complete fights or challenges throughout the game. But like by the time I ended the game, I had like over 1 million currency, and that was with everything like upgraded to its max. So like,
well, there you go.
The game gives you plenty of that currency, and I had plenty of money too. But yeah, the you can also one of the returning characters from Infinite Wealth is a character Julie, who's based on Honolulu, and she basically in Infinite Wealth, she was your like weapon shop upgrades. So if you needed to like improve your weapons or like craft new weapons, you went to her. In this, she's how you can craft the kind of premium cannons or machine guns, or the other weapon type that you have is you can go from ship combat, like when you're in the middle of a fight, you can at any time zoom into deck combat, and basically you just zoom in and you are then running around as Majima on the ship, and you can like put out fires if like a flamethrower has set your ship on fire doing that, or if you've been bombarded and some of your allies are down, you can basically like restore them, you can revive them to health in that mode. But you also have a rocket launcher that you in that mode can shoot, and so basically you can just kind of like pull up the reticle and just like, if you've got like, I've taken the ship mostly out, but now they're not in a good range of fire, or my cannons are like reloading or something like that. Let me just go into deck combat and take the last rocket launcher shot to take them out that way. You can do that. So yeah, fun combat in that regard. And most of the ship combat is, you are, I'm pretty sure it was this way in Assassin's Creed 2, but like you are only controlling your ship there. You don't have like a fleet, but a lot of times you'll be facing off against a fleet of other ships.
Yes.
And it'll be like, it'll either be a series of like, nothing enemies who are just kind of like, there's like, 5 enemies and they have however much health on their ships. Or there will be like one boss ship and then a handful of minions in their little armada. If you take out the boss ship, when there is a boss ship, if you take it out, regardless of who else is on the field, that triggers you to go into like deck to deck mode.
Gotcha, okay.
Which is like a combat mode a la The Man Who Erased His Name, where it's like your crew against the enemy's crew. And your crew has, power-ups that you'll kind of build up over time. The enemy's crew has power-ups they'll build up over time. And you want to try and take out like their first mates and their captain first, because they're the ones who can initiate those power-ups, and the enemies are trying to do the same with you and your crew. And so yeah, you're like, by the time you're like fully powered up, it's like, you're running around with 20 plus members of your crew. They're kind of all doing their own thing and attacking enemies of their own accord, and you're running around and basically just doing the action combat. And so yeah, that's basically how kind of the ship-to-ship combat is either purely ship-to-ship stuff, or there will be like a boss fight that culminates in, all right, you've taken out the hull of the ship, now they're weakened enough, and now you can basically board the ship and defeat them.
Gotcha, okay.
You're not, like, when you're completing those, you're getting, treasures and stuff like that are, like, there's like a little, like, basically treasures are just like key items that, pop up in your like treasure log inventory because you're a pirate. You're trying to get all this treasure.
Sure.
Some rewards will be like, one of the big things that Majima can kind of equip to like strengthen things is, he basically can put a ring on any finger of his 10 fingers, and they'll improve, his resistance to bullets, or his resistance to blades, or his strength, in bullets or blades or something. Like, basically, like, those are kind of the accessories that he can equip. And some of them will be like, if you have these 3 rings all equipped, you'll get this extra, super bonus or something like that.
So great. Cool.
And so you're sometimes getting those from like the ship to ship combat as rewards. But a lot of it is, okay, you got a treasure. That treasure is worth X number of dollars and X number of pirate influence points. And so those just go immediately into your total. And so, I took out this ship, and, that was like one of the first ones I did that was like all the encounters have like a 5-star rating kind of thing, or they're like 5 Jolly Rogers. So like the first time I took out like a 4-star, encounter, like the reward was like $100,000, and I was like, oh shit, now I'm rolling in cash. Great,
Let's go.
Now I can upgrade a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't been doing. So yeah, that's kind of the ship combat fun. It like the combat itself fun. The bigger pain point that I've ran into in the ship stuff is that like when you're not in combat, you're just kind of sailing between like a lighthouse, which is like a save point or a fast travel point on one of the sea maps, and you're traveling from there to like a spot on the map that has like a treasure chest, which is going to be like, oh, it's either going to be like an island that you kind of go into, and this ends up being much more of the like procedurally generated maps of like, all right, you're just going to go through a handful of like enemy encounters that culminate in you get treasure at the end, or there will be treasure tied to a boss battle, and the time to travel between like traveling on the sea is the slowest part of the game, I think, and that's even with them throwing in like little a la Spider-Man 2, like the rings that are like, okay, here's like a ring that will boost your speed while you're traveling along this line of rings. But even going through those lines of rings, it can still be like a good 2 minutes of travel time where you're just doing nothing but sailing on the sea. I kind of did that as long as I needed to do that to like clear everything out. But then I was very much like, okay, I don't need to. This area is completely done. I've gotten everything on this area. I never need to come back to this area to do any of the traversal stuff. So yeah, I think that's one of the like I would have liked if that was all just a little bit slower, or the ocean maps were smaller and more condensed, I think. Because I think that's if I were to go back to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, I think that would also be a problem I have there too, of like, all right, I'm not going to spend a ton of time just completely, freely sailing open seas. I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the most recent one where I did this, because that did also have the ship combat stuff too. It's like, okay, once I've gotten to a place, I'm just always going to fast travel to that place. I'm never going to do that like slow traversal, because it's usually like, okay, in between any of those checkpoints, there's going to be like 1 or 2 ship battles along the way. That you can kind of go and partake in, but it's a little slow going for the as high speed and fast paced action as like so many other elements of the game are. It felt unnaturally slow comparatively. But then you like the flip side of that is the tournament battles that you do in Madlantis, where it isn't like it's just, okay, you are immediately in combat with another ship. There isn't like a big long trek to them. It is just, okay, you're immediately in combat, so you just go in and you line up your shots, you pivot. Back on the combat side of things, I mentioned you can kind of upgrade your machine guns. The like premium version of the machine gun is a coconut gun that you like, once you get coconuts and various other materials, you can craft coconut weapons that are going to do higher damage, and it's basically just you machine gun firing coconuts at people instead of bullets. So those do more damage. They have and they have like a longer fire time before they basically overheat, and you need to like wait for them to reload. And then on the cannon side of things, you can deck out each side of your cannons with unique weapons. You start out with just kind of the basic cannons, but then you can also upgrade to like flamethrowers. Like I said, if you want to like set the enemy on fire, which will then kind of give them damage over time. You can freeze. There's basically like a freeze attack option that will disable that whatever side of the ship that is, so they won't be able to fire back on you until the freezing has thawed out. There's like a poison effect that you can throw on people. The thing that I ended up using most frequently, I think it was probably like the most like high powered over time, was like lasers. I just had like lasers that were super lasers built up that just shoot like like 5 or 6 lines of lasers off of enemies, and those lasers will fire for like 10 seconds and just do damage over time to the enemies, and then they'll have like a cooldown period.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I mean, like others, like if you want to go really nuts with it, you can get shark cannons, so you can launch sharks at enemies. They did like less damage, but I imagine they probably had like a higher quick firing rate that you could do.
Sure. Versus lasers.
Or something that I feel like this was something that got introduced in Infinite Wealth, but it might have also been in Like a Dragon or Yakuza Like a Dragon. One of the crafting materials that you can pick up is they call it like ethereal egesta, and it's basically like you're picking up shit from toilets. You're picking up shit from toilets. So you go into a bathroom and you pick up you search the toilets and you pick up this ethereal egesta. You can get like the most powerful bat in the game if you have like 100 of them in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and in this you can get one of the powerful cannons of the game that is basically like you're launching shit at your enemies, and it's another one that has like a damage over time, poison effect to it kind of thing. So yeah, like you have plenty.
This is how you feel sometimes when I talk about some stuff. This is how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not really go into that. Like I crafted the weapons just to like fully craft everything I could, but I never really used them. I stuck mostly to the lasers.
Sure. Gosh, I'm.
You
like,
also
this is just so giant poop cannons.
Yep.
Giant poop cannons for the ship, huh?
It's a Yakuza game.
It's a Yakuza game.
There are also a ton of like cosmetic customizations that you can throw onto the Goromaru is the name of your ship, as well. So you can deck it out however you want with the you can throw like they have a number of different like mastheads that you can throw on there. Whether it's like a mermaid, traditional classic mermaid, or a shark, or Kiryu, or Ichiban Kasuga, or Pirate Majima, or I mean, they're just even like wild, silly things from the Yakuza franchise as well. So yeah, lots of customization options. Same with Majima's look. You can pick up clothing elements all throughout the map, and you can customize his like street clothes look and his pirate clothes look if you want to match those up. You have a little companion character with you, little Goro, who's basically a baby tiger cub who's running around with you. My favorite was decking him out with a pirate hat of his own, so he would run around because he'll occasionally jump in and like launch himself onto an enemy in combat and stuff. But
Very cool.
Beyond that, he's also just kind of constantly like running around the map with you, and will occasionally have like random items that he's picked up that you can grab from him as like a little item boost bonus kind of thing. So yeah, that's I think the majority of ship combat stuff. In the arena, there's like different versions of ship combat. You can do challenges that are basically just the ship to ship combat. You can do challenges that are just deck to deck combat, so it's just like doing the fights, or you can do kind of a mix of the two, or you can do like tournaments that are like back to back to back, like a three phase go of like, okay, you do one ship combat, and then the corresponding deck combat, and then you go straight into another ship combat, deck combat, and then like the boss of the ship combat and the boss of the deck combat kind of stuff. So and the rewards for all those are money and pirate influence points and stuff like that. A lot of the staple mini games are still there. Like there's the standard golf. They just have golf in Madlantis just because, and the golf doesn't really have anything special fun to it.
Just golf?
They do have baseball that instead of doing the normal batting cages stuff, you are hitting a baseball at explosive barrels, and you're trying to basically clear out a wall of explosive barrels. There's a mix of like explosive and non-explosive barrels. If you hit an explosive barrel, it blows up everything around it, and if that happens to hit another explosive barrel, you'll get like a chain of explosions. If you hit a non-explosive barrel, it just hits that barrel, and the rest of the barrels drop accordingly. But yeah, you basically are trying to clear out the barrels to allow yourself to hit the lock of the giant treasure chest behind it for a series of increasing challenges, but you're doing it all with just the baseball mechanics. And that it's not a baseball being thrown at you, it is a cannonball. So you can judge based on how the cannon is like tilted, if it's going to be a straight shot at you, i.e. a fastball, or if it's going to like be super arched, or if it's going to be kind of a more normal shot at you. So you're kind of using all that to time it. So yeah, that's the one I would say that kind of gets the most piratey paint job on it is the baseball thing. And there's like a challenge mode and then like an endless mode where you just keep going. You get like 10 cannonballs, but there will be sometimes a barrel that's basically like, here's an extra cannonball, or there will be special barrels that are like, here you can use a special swing that will basically, if you connect, it will clear everything on the map, and basically like and so you get all the points from all that stuff. So yeah, theoretically it says you can go endlessly. I was never able to go more tin like 12 or 15 rounds because at some point it just kind of stops giving you extra balls. So yeah, but those are the mini games. Crazy Delivery, which is basically their Crazy Taxi knockoff, is back from Infinite Wealth. Dragon Kart makes a return from Yakuza Like a Dragon. It was not in Infinite Wealth, but it's basically a Mario Kart, but instead of throwing banana peels and red shells, you are picking up rocket launchers or machine gun, shots. So yeah. And they also had Sicko Snap from the last one return. Pretty much the same roots as the last game, because again, this game taking place, a good chunk of it takes place in Hawaii, and so you're revisiting a lot of the same locations from Infinite Wealth. But this one does have an extra Sicko Snap map that is much more like a Pokemon Island kind of thing, and it's you go off to a completely random island to take a picture of the elusive crystal sicko or whatever and it's basically like, yeah, just kind of a extra hard challenge map of the Sicko Snap Pokemon Snap parody. Yeah. The absolute wildest thing I'll throw out here is there is a bit in if you've played a lot of the Yakuza games, there's always like a mini game that has a weird like live action component to it.
Yeah, like sometimes it's the hostesses, sometimes it's the
Yeah, like I remember the first time encountering that in I think like Kiwami 2, where it's like, oh, you're
photographs.
You're doing a photograph thing, and yeah, you're like taking pictures of like live action girls. In Infinite Wealth, it was like there was a dating app kind of thing, and while a lot of the dates turned out to be kind of catfish scenarios and just would introduce you to like random characters, there were a few that were like, oh no, this is like now you've just unlocked a cutscene with a live action girl and weird stuff. This one has the weirdest interpretation of that I've seen, in that later in the game you'll unlock a series of side quests because one of your like ship crewmen, Masaru, wants the quote-unquote Minato girl experience. And a Minato girl is apparently like, upper echelon, like high-class girl, or like a girl that kind of goes out to like the clubs and stuff like that. Once you've done all the side quests to like meet up the five, and kind of like help out the 5 potential Minato girls, it goes into...
Oh boy, okay.
Essentially, I'm guessing you've been Googling it.
I Googled what a Minato girl is, and it is... Oh. Yep.
So it basically turns into like a Bachelor parody, where this guy Masaru is going around with a dandelion that he's like ready to give one of these girls. But yeah, it's all live action stuff, and it's just weird. It's all very weird. Like it starts out with him like in a club flirting with all these girls. He's a very like hammy kind of character. You're not in control of anything in these. It's just a video is playing for you because you've done the side quests and stuff like that.
As these live action things usually are.
Yeah. And so like the date goes horribly wrong, and like you come back and you meet everybody at the bar the next day, and like Masaru's got his head on the bar, and everybody else is there also at the bar and just being like awkward, and you basically have to go around person by person to find out like what happened throughout the rest of the night, and it basically ends up being like, oh, here's what he did on our little like one-on-one interaction, and you go through each of these extra little dates, and again they're like 3 to 5 minute videos.
Weird.
And it's just
so weird.
And it's all in Japanese. Like they don't have like an English version of this sequence. So it's all just Japanese with subtitles. And like one of them is, he's drinking milk, but he's pretending it's alcohol, and it's really hard alcohol. And the girl's like, but I'm pretty sure that's milk though. Like, I don't know what you're getting at. Another is like, he goes in and just takes an overlong shower to get ready for, his one-on-one date with a girl. And so we keep cutting between him in the shower and the girl back there kind of just like twiddling her thumbs. And then he finally, gets ready to come out, and she's already gone. And then another one is like he's getting his hair done. And so he's just got like his hairdresser doing his hair while he's trying to like flirt with this girl. And the girl leaves, and it's incredibly charming because she leaves the scene by stepping into the like shower, and you can see her still standing there in like the reflection of the glass and the reflection of the wall. So you can see her behind the shower curtain, just still standing there kind of like off screen, but he's like talking to her as if she has left the building or something. And it's just like, this is awkward as fuck.
That's so weird.
And so, yeah, it's just a very weird sequence of stuff that I was just kind of sitting there and being like, wow, this is definitely a thing. It like, I was glad it was like one of the last sub-story things I had to do, because it just kind of like, it very much is like, all right, well, while this is all happening, I'm just going to play a lot of like Pokemon TCG Pocket, and I'm just going to catch up on some battles and and do some stuff. So yeah, that was a weird, like that was the weird live action sequence of this game. But yeah, other than that, like very, very fun game. I mean, this early in the year, yeah, sitting in my top 10, might not be there come the end of the year. As much fun as I have with this game, and as much fun, like the handful of, like, obviously again, I still haven't played 5 or 6, but like all of the other Yakuza games that I've played have locked me in, that I'm like, I'm here to show up for any of these games when they come out and enjoy and see kind of the furthering of the story.
5 and 6. 5 has a very unique story that is a bit of a departure in that, because 4 is when they start introducing the new protagonist opportunity, like the new opportunities for protagonists.
I feel like they started,
or was that in 3?
I think they started that with 3.
3, yeah.
Where it's like you have like, you have like a few other characters. 4 definitely, it's like, oh, you barely play as Kiryu in 4.
Yeah.
Oh no, 3, because 3 is Okinawa, so 3 is probably still a lot of.
It's still a lot of Kiryu, and then
but I think it also has like a few other characters.
There are a couple other characters who have their own chapters.
Yeah, because that's probably when like Saejima gets introduced, and so yeah, you do. Yeah, the 3 and 4. The ones that I played before Infinite Wealth last year, was very much like, I'm barely playing as Kiryu in these games anymore. How is Kiryu still like the face of this franchise?
5,
but you always come back to him, so I get it.
5 is also like where Kiryu's story like makes a major step in like this, like essentially it's a lot of like the roost, like a lot of the chickens coming home to roost for Kiryu's past, and his ambition to take care of people and run this orphanage, and what does it mean for when somebody leaves kind of his care and is then put into the spotlight of something, and what sacrifices is Kiryu willing to make. And that leads into Yakuza 6, which is much more of a, after I stepped away, what happened to the people I loved and cared about. And that's what the Yakuza 6 ends up being, a longer journey. And kind of
like Infinite Wealth since Infinite Wealth is like half Ichiban, half Kiryu's story, the Kiryu side of things we touched on last year is very much like a trip down memory lane. It's Kiryu's got terminal cancer. He's kind of going through and like trying to like reflect on his past, and so it has a ton of nods to the former games, but then it also has like a series of scenes that he's doing with Date of like him reuniting from afar to check in with like big characters of the past of the series. And like there were only like one or two that I didn't know, which I was just like, I'm guessing you're from 5 and 6.
Probably. Also, yeah, 5 and 6 is when he gets into like a lot of like there's like interesting enough, 6 has a lot of emphasis on Chinese immigrants and like Taiwanese immigrants in Japan. That makes it like a very interesting kind of like
that's been in a few of the games. Yeah,
it's a very big focus in 6. Yeah. And there's a reason for that I'm not going to spoil it because I'm hoping someday you go play 5 and 6.
I have them. I just haven't gotten around to it. It's very much like my tradition has very much been like I play a couple games before each of the RPG ones. So I imagine the next time we get another Kasuga story, I'll go back in the January, February leading up to whatever Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth 2 is or whatever comes next.
You played Man Who Erased His Name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like you understand the kind of like the reason why he did what he did.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, like even though I haven't played 5 and 6, the games that follow up have given me enough like of the context of like the big things that happen in 5 and 6, so I know like I know kind of the state of Kiryu going into those games. I just don't know all the like ins and outs and all the little twists and turns.
It's worth going
or all the sub stories of those games. That's another thing. Like the sub stories of these in this game continues to be a fun like mix of bringing back characters from past installments. Or introducing a handful of new characters into the mix. So yeah, lots of fun to be had there. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to shout out about Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. It is very much it does exactly what it says on the tin. Another mini game, I guess that like a 2-part. I'll say one is you can. So there's Goro's Kingdom, which again is named for Goro, the little tiger cub that you have, not Goro Majima.
Yeah.
And basically you can recruit animals to your island that will just kind of like hang out there, and you can like when you return to Rich Island for various points in the game, you can give them food and kind of increase their like affection towards you, and the higher their affection, the better rewards they'll give you. Like you recruit a chicken, a low affection chicken will give you just regular eggs, but then you get like quality eggs, or you'll get golden eggs once they're like fully maxed out. And a lot of those materials and crafting, like or in this case ingredients, feed into there's like a cooking mini game called Goro Kitchen, where you can basically go up to like a cooking minigame option and select like a food that you want to pull from the map, and you could from your recipe book basically, and depending on the meal, it'll be like, okay, this is going to give you a little bit of health and a little bit of heat, or it'll give you a lot of health, or it'll give you like a lot of heat, and to cook them, it's a mix of like the quality of ingredients that you use, as well as like a little series of mini games. There's like 3 different potential mini games that you're going to play. One is basically like starting the fire, and it is effectively like the meter goes up, and you try and like find the sweet spot as you're like blowing on the fire to like start the fire. Another one is a chopping mini game, and that's going to be like button prompts. It's going to give you like triangle, triangle, circle, circle, and you hit them in order. If you mess it up, you chop yourself, and take some time. And all these are on like a time limit. And you basically have to do like each challenge so many times to complete, and the better you do, the better it's going to affect the meal. And then the last one is like Skim the Scum, and it's basically like a pot, a boiling pot, and scum surfaces to the top, and you're basically dipping the ladle in to clear the scum off of the top of the thing. And so you do the cooking things. And if you succeed very well and you had like a lot of good ingredients, you'll get like a 3-star version of that meal. The meals are either going to be health boosts, like health items that you can use in combat or out of combat, or they are pirate themed items. So you can do like a meal for 5 or a meal for 10, and basically you can throw a feast on your ship and invite 5 or 10 of your pirate companions.
I almost said goons and then want to say dudes and then call them goods. The dudes, nice.
So you could and that will increase their increase their morale and increase their experience points because they're leveling up, and the higher level they are, the better it is for whatever part of the ship they're assigned to. That's the other thing. You like with your crew, they're assigned either to kind of your ship, so they can be assigned to the cannons on either side or the machine guns, or you can have somebody who is assigned to the first mate, and each like a lot of them have like a special first mate ability where if they are your first mate, this one will do more damage to an enemy hull, or this one will give you an extra repair boost, or this one will give you an extra fuel boost or something like that. And then the rest of your crew you can throw into like your boarding parties, basically. You can unlock up to 4 boarding parties of four members and a like leader each. I think it was 4. Yeah. And so basically there's also like, if they have, leader abilities and they are in your, boarding party, they'll have those leader abilities. And that's again, like, oh, they're going to do more damage, or they're going to, increase your heat faster, or they'll like slowly regenerate health or something like that. So that's how you basically like are assigning out your party members. Base level enemies. It's very much like the arena fights of Man Who Erased His Name. And kind of the way those recruitable allies were tied in. So like the low rarity ones will only be able to go up to level 20, but then like there's a bronze, a gold, and a platinum or whatever that will do like 30, 40, and level 50. And a lot of like the level 50 ones are, for the end game sub stories, you can recruit this guy to your party, or like a lot of them will just have like a challenge associated with like, hey, bring me this craftable item, and if you do, I'll join your party. Or a lot of them are going to be like, hey, fight me in combat, and if you beat me, I'll join your crew. So yeah, the one thing I'll say in terms of like progression, and again, I think this is largely because it's just a short game overall anyway, and like a 5-chapter story, but your pirate crew like notoriety has 5 different levels. And I was level 5 very early on in chapter 2.
Okay, so it doesn't take long
at that point, like there was no like progression on that side of things. It was very much just, all right, I'm just leveling up everybody on my crew. But if anybody was like tied to, hey, I will only join your crew once you're like this level notoriety or above, I was like, all right, well, very early on, I've got everybody from that side of things aboard. So. But yeah, it's a very fun game, fun action game, fun new installment in the Yakuza kind of franchise, the Like a Dragon series of things. In the last couple games, I think have been teeing up potentially that like we're gonna see a Yakuza in New York in the coming future, because they've been introducing a lot of like characters. Like one of your characters in this is basically like a New York financier. And there were characters in Infinite Wealth that had like ties to New York. So I'm like, are they like, is that the direction that we're, going to start seeing this go now that we've bridged the gap and we're not solely in Japan anymore with Hawaii stuff? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of where the series continues to go from here, as they love to change it up every time anyway. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Any final questions for me before we move over to Chrono Cross?
No, I think I'm good. You answered, like I said, my questions really were more focused towards like ship combat, because that to me is like, I'm like, that's the wildest thing that you could be putting into Yakuza at this point. Like Yakuza already had everything else as far as like any mini game in any video game has ever been concerned about. So
it's like it is. I mean, I didn't play Skull and Bones. I got to imagine this is a better game than Skull. Like, there's a better pirate ship mini game than Skull and Bones, because, like RGG Studio, like they show up and they don't do it half-assed. So while it isn't as fast-paced as I would like for a lot of just kind of the general ship combat stuff, the ship combat itself, fun, customizable. You can mix and match your weapons, have some fun with that. But other than that, it's very much like, yeah, we're going to do what they did in Assassin's Creed because that was a fun gameplay, and not enough games give you the chance to be a pirate. So we're going to go ahead and give you a chance to be a pirate. And there we go. And we're going to do it with we're going to do it with the most most recognizable pirate guy that we have in our franchise, Goro Majima with his eye patch and all that stuff. I should have been wearing.
You should have been wearing it the
eye
entire
patch
time.
this entire time because I bought the deluxe edition that came with the eye patch. So ha ha ha.
I still say you look so much like Big Boss or something like that.
There we go. Last thing I'll say on that is the Matt Mercer-ness, because I played the whole thing in the English. I
finally heard Matt Mercer's Majima voice, and I'm just like, I just don't know how to absorb that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it that is like, oh, this is Matt Mercer. He's not doing like a huge crazy affectation like he does in some of his voices. But the thing that always stands out to me is, and I mentioned this to you, I think his entry point into the character is he does the Majima laugh and then kind of goes from there. Like whenever he's recording a line, that's at least if it were me, that's kind of the approach I would be making into this character, because it's such an iconic component of who that character is. But yeah, I think Matt Mercer has a lot of fun with the character, and again, because it's like so over. Majima is always such an over-the-top character. He can just go bonkers talking about being a pirate and killing people on the seven seas and stuff like that. So yeah, lots of fun, and I think he does a very fun job in the role. No real duds of performances for me, at least. And it's another thing, especially as somebody who I'm just always going to naturally gravitate more towards the English ones where I'm not having to do that extra work of reading a lot. I will say I wish this game used its voice cast more. There's a lot of stuff in here that could have been voiced that just isn't. It is like pretty much every sub-story is just text.
That's rough.
I would have appreciated if it was more using the voice cast brought forth. But the things I've loved about a lot of the recent ones, going back to like the Kiwami games where they introduced English versions of the stories, is the localization seems to always be very, very strong. Yeah, just a lot of fun. So shout out to Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Did everything in it, got the platinum for it, and had a great time with it. So let's throw it over to you now, Cam, for some Chrono Cross talk, which I was surprised because I was like, when we talked on Thursday after recording our last podcast, you were like, yeah, let's hope I have something come, for Saturday to talk about. So when you got here, I was like, all right, so I got Like a Dragon and I've got 2 Point Museum. What do you have anything you want to talk about? And you were like, Chrono Cross. And I was like, okay.
Yep.
Especially given that I just did a write-up on Chrono Cross in my 40 for 40 piece that I'm still working on. So it's a little fresh in my mind is Cross, the Chrono Cross conversation. So yeah, what are your thoughts on some Chrono Cross here in the year of our whatever 2025?
Give me 1 second. I have to double check what year Chrono Cross originally came out.
Oh, I can pull it up for you. It was like 2001, I think. I have that in a browser right now somewhere. Chrono Cross. It came out Japan in 1999, US in 2000.
1999, 2000 in the US.
End of the year 2000, because I remember, I think November 2000, if I am recalling correctly, or no, December 2000, because I mentioned in my write-up, I was a huge fan of Bare Naked Ladies at the time. Maroon came out in November of 2000. Chrono Cross came to the US in December, and I played the two of those things in tandem. So every time I think about Chrono Cross, music like Pinch Me is innately playing in the back of my head.
So Chrono Cross officially came out August 15th, 2000. You probably, though, didn't pick it up until December, though. Okay. Which doesn't surprise me. Not for you, but because I also don't remember playing it that early in the year 2000. But yeah, no, this was a game that...
I was thinking the November date from the Japan release.
Gotcha.
It was November 1999 in Japan. But yes, August 15th, 2000.
So I was, if we're talking 2000, I haven't turned 11 yet.
But yeah, I'm a sophomore in high school. Yeah.
I haven't turned 11 yet, and this is my problem. I don't know how the hell I figured out how to run any of the combat in this game. To do any of the combat in this game at 10 years old.
I mean, they give you a decent enough job tutorializing you to get you through it. I don't think you can become good at the combat unless you're looking at guides or have an advanced degree in engineering or something.
Pretty
like that.
much. That's what it feels like. I like the level of depth and complexity in this game makes no goddamn sense. Like, why is it this detailed? Why is it this, like, there's so much about this game that's just like, I see the like kernels of ideas, and then I see how this gets baked for way too long. Holy crap.
It's also, I mean, like, there is also an element, you can just attack.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you really get into like the element combat, that's where.
And like the innate element versus other elements versus your
versus whatever you've got equipped that is like, okay, that uses an element. Yeah.
That uses an element. And what does it mean when you have like a character who has innate white using black spells? It's not as effective. They're always like at a -1 point. I'm like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here mechanically. I don't know how my ass beat this game at 10 years old.
Well, I'm fairly certain I have the guide in the closet behind you for this game because I was probably playing it. And we talked about this before we started. I'm pretty sure I never beat this game. I very much got like overwhelmed by the amount of characters and
that you can't all recruit in one go.
That you can't, and you can't get them all in one go. And even when I went back and like did the like revisit the game in the Radical Dreamers edition that you're playing that came out a couple years ago, I booted up and I was like, I'm pretty sure I should have been able to recruit the dog by now. What did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't do this thing.
Yeah,
all right, I'm going to restart the game and go and
yep.
play. And so like it was, okay, I'm going to just try and follow a guide to recruit as many characters as I can. But then for that game, that just didn't end up being fun for me. And so, yeah, I kind of bounced off it pretty quickly.
It's interesting because I was like, I remember the beginning of this game being much longer than it was. And I'm like, maybe I was bad at this game.
Yeah. Or you go through and you just grind a lot.
You can't grind a lot, though. That's the thing about this game is that you can't do a whole bunch of grinding.
You're limited because
you're limited.
You can go to like one or two of the areas that will like respawn enemies.
Oh, no.
Over time.
That's not what the problem with grinding is. The problem is that technically you as a character, your characters never level up. When you beat a boss, you get a star level.
Oh, right.
And that will dictate like your cap of your strength. You can do like mini levels.
I would grind for like the materials.
Yes.
For crafting stuff.
That makes more sense. Like materials and crafting, there's not, because of how many characters you have and how much crossover there is with character weapons, it makes sense why you want to be grinding these out and getting those. Also, picking up elements and everything. I'm like, there's a lot of like really cool ideas here that I think are just kind of like slapped together in a very convoluted way. But I do think there's a lot of good going on here with this game. One of the things I think that's interesting is if you really take this versus like Chrono Trigger, these games are so wildly different.
Yeah.
So wildly different that this is like the actual quote unquote sequel.
Thematically and story wise similar. Combat wise are worlds apart.
Combat and like world and characters and everything are so different. And also I will say this is probably like the most beautiful, ugly game I've ever played. Because there is a beauty to the art style of this game that they've approached, whether it's the kind of like island coloring, those kind of like tropical coloring to characters, whether it's their skin palettes, whether it's their hair, whether it's their clothing, a lot of stuff that kind of helps step out of what was kind of like the generic, Super Nintendo characters from Chrono Trigger. This time we get to see like these characters, a lot of them have a lot of similarities to them in their models, but there is something that's very beautiful about the colors and like the watercolors that they use for this game that help keep it from being too like PS1, PS2 ugly. PS1 ugly, really.
Yeah.
Like it helps curve the polygonals in a way that still feels like weird and awkward, but not at a way that feels like trying to go back and play like Metal Gear Solid 1. And like everything is super black, your Final Fantasy 7. Like the smoothing that's out there that they're doing with it is curved around this color palette. And it's something that's actually like, I think is still really, really cool. The way that they go about it, the way that it's kind of like works through the world. I'm up into Termina and I'm about to go invade Viper Manor, which is like a big crux point of the game.
Yeah. As I played through that part of the game so many times and then just like, after that, and after you start getting into like the dimensional shifts, I just like always started falling off, especially because I went into that game well before I'd ever played Chrono Trigger. So
oh wow, really?
Yeah, I played Chrono Cross first because I didn't play.
Whoa.
I didn't play Chrono Trigger until the PS1 port of it, and even the PS1 port, I didn't play Chrono Trigger through. I finally played Chrono Trigger through when it was like the DS port.
Yeah, the DS port. Yeah.
That's
wild.
First time I finally played through the game. So
okay.
So yeah, I did not have like the nostalgic love for the Chrono verse-ish thing, and is obviously a very different game anyway, but it has like character names that pop up and you know, characters that are like heavily influenced by these other characters and all that kind of stuff.
Or there's cut, we find out later that there's cut content. Guile is actually supposed to be Magus, and like it does its own whole thing. But also it's a continuation of Chrono's original timeline in that you're just in a different part of the world. Because up north is where Chrono's from. And you're in this southern island, and like there's troops that come from Chrono's country at a certain point in the home. Like, it does such a really cool job of going through a lot of this, and I love it. Like, there's a lot that I'm remembering kind of like the greater themes of the world around you. There's not as much personal drive, because one of the first things that happens is your Surge, who's the main character, basically inadvertently activates and goes to a version of his world where he died as a child.
Yeah.
He, quote unquote, they say he drowned, but in reality he was attacked by a panther demon and killed. That's like later on they reveal that. Spoiler. Sorry everybody for a game that came out literally 25 years ago. So yeah, like it's like there's a whole lot about like and why, because of certain circumstances with the time shenanigans of essentially it's you save the world in Chrono Trigger, but can you really save the world? And the answer is no, because despite the Chrono's team's best efforts, like they were teenagers. They saved their world and their timeline from Lavos, and they did that, and that's great. But what is people's reactions to a bunch of teenagers saving the world and then disappearing? Like, how do people react to that? What's the leftover legacy to that? Like, I know this in the back of my head from like years ago. Like, Chrono Cross blew my mind. It took me like 2 to 3 years to beat the game. But then when I finally beat it, I finally understood it. Not 2 to 3 years. I think like a year or two to beat it. Just because like I would hit points and I was like, I'm not good. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And then like it would just take time to basically just build up. And it's like, well, there's no real grinding, but it's like, okay, well, what do I need to learn to do better? What characters should I be bringing to these fights? What is the benefit of certain characters with their innate elements that they can use?
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't have the blue character with like a bunch of greens. Like there's things to do better about that. And so getting older and like a little bit older and beating the game. And like, so I first beat Chrono Trigger when I borrowed it from my neighbor. And by borrowed it, I also mean like I would borrow a Super Nintendo as well because I didn't own one. I would have a friend come over who brought a Super Nintendo, but he didn't own Chrono Trigger. So I would borrow Chrono Trigger, and for like a year, every possible weekend we did this, and eventually we beat the game. And then when I got a little bit older, when I was about 8 or 9, or I was about 9 or 10, so in this era right before Chrono Cross came out, I was playing the emulated version, like the ROM version. Here's a fun fact about the ROM version. It's bugged intentionally for pirating.
Yeah.
Once you get to the future timeline, anytime you try to enter a city, you just get gray skies. And it's for people out there who did emulating, like that was the thing back then. It's like you couldn't get a good emulation of Chrono Trigger because of that. And it wasn't until the PlayStation 1 version came out that like I finally got through that game and actually like played it through on my own, not over these like weekend breaks, not through all of this stuff, but just on my own, personally doing it and playing through the PlayStation 1. And I unlocked every ending. Like I went back and I replayed the game so many times that I unlocked every ending. So Chrono Trigger has a deep I have a deep love for this game. Chrono Cross in part.
I don't, and I think it's because the first ending I got was like one of the bad endings because I fought Magus and didn't realize that I should have like let him join my party. So A, that was way harder for me in general. And B, it meant I didn't have his elemental type or whatever for any of the rest of the game.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
His dark elemental type, which you can only get for him.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was like, so my initial time playing through the game was not a fun overall experience. And so when I would eventually go back and like replay.
Did you not take down the Blackbird
stuff
with him?
I don't recall. I mean, that's the thing is like, I don't have this innate memories or love of that game in the way that I could tell you every beat of Final Fantasy VI or something like that. Just because, I just don't have that connection to Chrono Trigger or Chrono Cross. Yeah,
I think that there is just something that Chrono Cross, especially, like I'm playing through it and I'm like, okay, wait, oh shoot, no, I didn't pick up Pashul, who's one of my favorite characters, the dog.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I didn't pick them up. I was like, but I can't. I don't want to like restart the game. It's like, no, but I know because I've played this game so many times. I know if I turn Kid down at the grave, Lena, like Away World Lena, which is not your love interest, she's the one whose childhood friend died, and Pashul automatically join your party. So I did that, but I know that by the time I get to Termina, Lena or not Lena, Kid offers to join your party at that point, so you can still recruit her.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 8 different times you can recruit Kid. They basically be like, hey, you should recruit her.
Yeah. She's on the box art for a reason, guys. You want this character.
You want this character. And she's a good character. She's your thief character. She has a lot of combo opportunities, and she's the only red-colored character you get for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like it, and then I picked up Guile because Guile is awesome. He's the first black element character that you get to use. And he's a magician, and he has some really sick, like, innate elemental abilities later on. Did some prerequisite stuff that I know I needed to do to pick up Glenn. Like this thing, I've replayed Chrono Cross several times too. So getting to play it now as an adult, be like, I remember this. Okay, now I'm now at a point where I have to go talk to Korcha, and Korcha, I'm going to convince him to let me, to take me to the coastal line behind Viper Manor so I can climb up the cliff face, get into Viper Manor, and then do all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then face off with Lynx.
Yeah.
Lynx being this very good villain as far as like big machinations, like crazy plan, backstabbing, like backstab potential through the roof.
Also a big cat baddie.
Big bad cat daddy. You meant baddie.
I said baddie.
You said baddie, but I heard daddy, and so I said daddy afterwards. But yeah, big cat bad baddie. But yeah, no, and dad. Viper, like there's a lot of these characters. I was like, oh, that's right. And then Glenn, who's like the little, like, I'm like, I always very much like had a connection to Glenn as like the second brother of a family, where like my older brother was like always better than me at everything. And so growing up, that was like a character, like those younger brother characters I always like I identified with. And so this one being like the only one that's alive though, and it's like, oof. Awesome stuff, just awesome stuff that I'm like excited to kind of get into again. And the way that I know, like honestly, what's really, really cool about it is the way that Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross are both games that aren't really about their main characters. They're more about the story of time or dimensional traveling and the impact that events could have that change things in the future, or that things are predetermined. And what does that mean for the end of the world? And what does that mean for, not the end of the planet's world, but the end of time and existence in Chrono Cross? And like, what does it look like when people try to use artificial means to impose a change rather than seeking change themselves, which is a big part of Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger, in the kind of like the so-called quote-unquote perfect high-tech societies, the decisions certain people make that doom their society and civilization, that end up also dooming the planet, etc. Like, you see these kind of themes throughout it, and it's a weird game to be playing in this modern day and age. There's not too many parallels, but some of the parallels that are there, I'm like, yep, incompetent people who are put in positions that they should not be in. Who elected this? Who elected this Lynx demon?
I mean, that is always an evergreen topic.
Yeah.
You can always find somebody out there to throw that light on. As we're talking about it, I am realizing That was probably one of the first multiverse kind of stories I ever experienced. Because obviously that was not nearly as like big and mainstream as it is in these days.
No. I still sometimes I'm still surprised that Marvel was able to get over with people multiverse. Like that's a thing that can exist, but they did it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts there on Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to keep going and playing through it. It's something that's like it's a little bit of a one thing
It's a comfort food kind of game.
A little bit,
yeah,
a little bit, but also the music in the game is so damn good.
I remember talking to somebody about that, and relaying the story of like my emotions and my thoughts on Chrono Cross are so innately tied to Maroon from Bare Naked Ladies that like I don't have any recollection of the songs, or like I hear the songs and like vaguely remember them, but I don't have like an innate like, oh my god, that was such a great soundtrack, because I wasn't listening to the soundtrack, because I was playing that game and had like our CD player blaring Pinch Me and stuff like that.
What's interesting is like when the game opens, its opening credit scene, or like it's just opening for like when you start up the game. Like I'm like, oh man, I was like taken back. It was like like just taking me right back to the past of like the journal opening and kind of like the dialogue as it's being written out throughout it, and it's a reminder that this is Serge's story. Like these are Serge's recollections, his story, his journal, and how it's tied to, and even how the save system and everything about that is tied to the greater universal, like keeping records of time as well. It's just such a fascinating way to approach a sequel that is, at the time, I was blown away by it, and like it didn't make sense to me. Really, like, why is this like where's Chrono? Where's Frog? Where's these characters? And then getting to kind of understand when you like get through a certain part of the game, you realize that this is not a game about like, this isn't a sequel in the traditional sense. This is a sequel about legacy. And what does it mean about kind of like taking the thing that people have left behind when they pass on and carrying it forward? What does it mean for someone to do the opposite of that? To not choose sacrifice, but to then instead vaingloriously attach themselves to a future. And that's not even like a main villain storyline. That's a smaller storyline with a couple of characters. But also, like, what does it mean when time goes on and people change? The way the world changes, and like, what does it mean when you're dealing with like pocket dimensions and like high sci-fi stuff that like Chrono Trigger really did a great job of bringing in kind of this futuristic time travel science stuff, melding it with like a medieval, like you went to the medieval time, you went to the future, you explored all these times, and then you get a game like Chrono Cross, which is you have two identical worlds and you bounce between the two. And so you solve problems that Away World has with items that you pick up in Home World, and you take them over. But what does that mean when these items have been lost? Or what does it mean when now there's two items that are now there? And what happens when like the sequence you use to bounce between worlds is you're locked out of it. So now even though you're in your home world again, you are not you anymore. Like that's one of the best twists of that game is the identity switch that happens. And I can't wait to get to that part because it's teased in the very beginning of the game with like the weird, like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
The in media res. Yeah, in media res on that is just like still like kicks, like still good. Also, when you restart the game, every time you restart,
you get a random
third character.
Trio. Yeah.
And so it's like there's that level of awesome stuff in this game that is just I love that, even though sometimes I'm like, this feels slapdash put together. Like the combat system's just like really intricate and weird, but it has a level of care and intention behind it that it doesn't feel bad. Like it's not a bad system. It's just a weird system. And I think back to like the PlayStation 1 era, and like there were a lot of RPGs with a lot of weird systems back then.
Yeah, I mean Square notoriously was changing their system up in every game.
Yeah, like the only consistency you had was
even in the Final Fantasy games, systems were changing.
Yeah, materia to draw mechanic to
the
class-based abilities and spells,
weapons and stuff.
Yeah. Just
and even before that, like the character skills being tied specifically or espers in 6 and the job system in 5 and and that's all within one franchise, let alone when you jump over into Chrono Trigger or Chrono Cross.
Just the way that they did it, I think, is just, it's still astounding to be like, hey, we're going to put out a sequel to one of the most beloved RPGs of all time, and it's going to not have it's all going to take place outside of any place you visited in the first game. It's such a bold and radical take, but then also to be older now and realize, oh, this wasn't even their first go at it. Radical Dreamers is a thing, and that kind of and it was wait, it was going to be not a dating sim, but a visual novel. They were going to do it as a visual novel. What? It's wild. It's so wild and weird and crazy, and I love it. There's aspects about this that I'm just in love with. And of course, finding the Radical Dreamer files online, through archives that people had found at Square Enix sites and stuff. And it was just, it was a time, man. It was a time to be around on the internet. It was a time to be part of the fandom of the Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross fandom. It was a time to be just a kid on the internet. And then 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Literally a year later.
Yeah.
So it's weird because there's a theme of when the game opens and it's talking about youth and what it was like to run free in our youth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. It's when did I stop running free? And then it's oh, that's right. The worst thing that could have happened. So yeah, it's weird as a millennials also. People were just millennials, you guys are so depressing and sad. And it's I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, because we dealt with a world-changing global event and then multiple once-in-a-generation recessions after that. Yeah, wild that we're having a bad time of things.
We had a global pandemic, the largest terrorist attack that's ever happened. You list it, we've been through it. It's we have every right to be depressed, and it's also, instead of being able to take the reins and control of industry and government, we were because of the recession,
by people hoarding that
shit. Denied by people hoarding it.
By billionaires hoarding their shit.
So we didn't even get we're the first generation of people where it's oh yeah, you guys actually do have it worse than your predecessors. And it's yeah, man, I graduated high school and basically within a year was told you have to take bottom barrel minimum wage no matter where you work because it's the only way you're going to get a job. Enjoy that for 5 years. Yeah, I know. So this game is pure nostalgia of a time before then. And I'm thinking back, my friend David, who was the one who brought the Super Nintendo, he borrowed Chrono Cross and was playing ahead in it because I was getting stuck at it. And he was okay, well, can I borrow it? I was yeah, sure. I'm frustrated with it. And he was further into the game. And I was okay, now let me borrow it back. So, cause you just told me, he goes, this is how you now beat this, the thing you were doing before. You need to go find this thing, upgrade your get your new weapons. Cause this is where you can get the new weapon material. I was okay, getting all this all down, being hey, actually, I also found out there's this thing called Game Facts.
Yeah.
This is my introduction to Game Facts, was Chrono Cross. I had my friend who also bought the game call me up and be hey, we don't have internet, but you guys do. Can you look up on the guide and tell me how I'm supposed to get through the ghost ship?
Okay, yeah, but I have to hang up because it's dial-up internet.
No, because my family, we had the double lines, baby.
Oh, okay.
Yep. We were it was at a point in time when my family was we are going to be a little bougie. We'll get a second phone line because guess what? My dad needs to receive phone calls, and there's 5 kids trying to be on the internet at all times. And so I was yeah, I'd be okay, so I'm on the phone. So this is what you need to do. Or yeah, go left, go right, go left, go in that door. Not that door, the other one, the one that has that thing on it. Yeah, go in there. This brings back so many weird, crazy memories that just are impossible to reenact. You just will never run into them today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of the after at school comparing notes thing to the kind of burgeoning of the digital age of information.
Yep.
And everybody being Cam, you have all the best guides saved. Can you walk me through this? Or hey, there's a game called Ninja Gaiden that I'm playing on Xbox that I've never I don't know how to beat it. And can you look up the guide of like how to beat it? I was like, yeah, sure. Now I'm explaining to you what the guide's saying, but you have to tell me, like, give me information back. And it was this weird thing. And it's like, oh man, that was the beginning of my life in customer service.
There you go.
That's a sad realization for me to have in this moment.
Sure,
an epiphany.
Any final thoughts?
I could have been one of the Nintendo guys who's at, you call the Nintendo helpline. I could have been that guy.
Yeah. I mean, that job didn't last for long with the burgeoning internet. Actually, I think by the time the internet's rolling around, that job kind of became obsolete.
Yeah. Very much so.
But yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on Chrono Cross before we move on?
No, I mean, it's a great game. It's currently $4.99 on the super sale going on PlayStation Network, so go check that out.
Yeah, like I said, I have it, and I played a little bit of it when the Radical Dreamer version came out, but did not stick with it too very long because I was like, oh, that's right. There are reasons this game just didn't connect for me, and trying to go back to it now and do all this with like PS1-esque graphics. Yeah, they cleaned up a little bit, but it's a port, it's a remaster, not a remake kind of thing. So it still has a lot of the jank and feel of the original. But cool. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Then we will go ahead and dive into final topic of the show, 2 Point Museum, which is what I've been playing a lot since finishing Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. This is the latest game from 2 Point Studios. For those that don't know, 2 Point Studios started up a few years back with 2 Point Hospital as a spiritual successor from a lot of the team at 2 Point Studios is the old Bullfrog team that made like Theme Park and Theme Hospital way back in the day, and Theme Hospital especially was one of my favorite games of early PC era stuff. So yeah, they kind of reformed, made 2 Point Hospital, and they followed up with 2 Point Campus, and now their latest here is 2 Point Museum. Same premise for all three. You're running a hospital or a university campus, or in this case, museums. As a like sim builder kind of thing, you're out there controlling, the exhibits that you're displaying. You're managing the staff. You're decorating the facility. You're adding bathrooms. You're adding staff rooms, training rooms, all sorts of stuff there. But the twist that this game has that the prior two did not is, in order to populate your museum with exhibits, you got to send your staff out on expeditions. So you go to like a map, and it basically has a like, okay, here's an expedition you can send people on, and it's a simple expedition. It's kind of the starter expedition. Each expedition has like a set of rewards that you're gonna pull from when your team comes back, and there are also going to be like a set of risks and additional rewards tied to the expedition that you can either achieve or unlock or suppress based on like the skill level of your staff that are sending out. So, the expedition, one of the first expeditions you're going to send people on, the rewards are going to be, one of 3 different like fossil exhibits that you can kind of get back. And they're all very tongue in cheek. It's all silly things like you find a fossil. One of the first ones you get is a fossil of a floppy disk. And it is like the hard disk, but it is like in a stone pedestal kind of thing, as if it was a fossil of a gastropod or something else, like something else actually fossilized. This is a disc, a fossilized disc. So it's that kind of humor and tongue in cheek to it. But yeah, you might get one of those, and you get them of like various states of, you might get an average one, or you might get a great one, or an epic one, or a pristine condition one is kind of the top tier. And it's basically like, standard blue, purple, gold kind of hierarchy. The higher level it is, the more perks you can throw into an exhibit, where you can basically attach something like, okay, for this exhibit, I'm attaching a buzz boost perk, which means it's going to have higher buzz and more people are going to be excited to see it in the museum. Or this one might have like a dust resistance factor, so it'll deprecate. It'll take longer to deprecate, and so you have more time before one of your staff members needs to come and like restore the exhibit. And so those are kind of the major reward is whatever you're gonna like come back home. It's gonna be the crate that your ship drops off on your helipad. But the other little like mini rewards that you might get on that would be like, if you send somebody out with the skill of like survival skills, you might unlock like an XP boost that might randomly be assigned on your expedition. Or, if you're if you're only sending out like a level 1 person, you might get a thing that's like, okay, you're gonna have
They were
a
killed
potential
by the
for getting,
indigenous people or something.
there are some MIA conditions, like when you go into like
when you're stealing artifacts from
expeditions,
cultures.
it's not like killed by indigenous people. I mean, at least I haven't found that. But it's like, oh, you're doing an expedition in like the icy mountains. Mm-hmm. You might have somebody freeze out there and they become MIA, and basically you lose that staff person. The less extreme version of that is an injury. They take an injury, and then it's going to like, oh, this injury, if they don't heal up, they're going to have like a significant like detriment to the work that they're doing. Like, oh, they have a broken foot, or tar foot is one of the ones that you'll find in kind of that first expedition. And they'll walk around, and they'll be getting like tar, on your museum that your janitors have to follow around and clean up. And they also just go significantly slower, so they're not able to get around the exhibits as much. But there's an item in the staff room that you can basically like send people into that will basically heal their injuries over time. Or you can, the way to avoid getting Tarfoot in the first place is if you send somebody in with whatever, like maybe Tarfoot is, okay, the combined level of the people on this expedition needs to be over 3. So if you're sending out like a level 1 person, there's a chance they're going to get Tarfoot. But if you send over, if you send a level 5 staffer, that's going to be grayed out, and suddenly this is no longer going to potentially pop up on this mission. There are also cargo items that you can get on your expeditions, or you can either craft cargo items, or there are a few that are basically like always available. Like one is a first aid kit, which will always eliminate 1 injury option from your expedition, but there might be 3 or 4, so you might still need to like do a mix and match to suppress out those other ones, or just risk it, because you're not always going to be guaranteed to get that injury. It's just basically like a chance of injury. And same with like a chance of like an experience point boost or something like that. You might get like a nice little reward. So that's kind of how the expeditions are run, and as you bring back exhibits, you can send people back out on the same expedition and bring back maybe a better version of that exhibit. There will be later exhibits that are basically like a part of a whole kind of exhibit. Like once you start getting like skeletons, it'll be like, okay, you found this skeleton, and you can display this, the first part of this skeleton in your museum if you want, but it's going to be labeled as like an incomplete exhibit, and you need to go back and run that expedition a few more times to find like the other parts of the that skeleton until you have like the full complete version of that skeleton. And that's going to be like, oh, it might be 3 parts, it might be 5 parts. I don't think I've seen anything more than 5, but I haven't played a lot of the like end game expeditions yet or anything like that. So that's kind of how you're building up exhibits, and then you bring it in, you plop it down in your museum, and you can basically throw decorations around it to increase like the buzz. So like there are like multiple themes in the game. The first one that you're going to really encounter is prehistoric. So this is fossils, this is skeletons, this is like frozen things. And like one of them might be a frozen caveman. And it's basically like a guy in a block of ice, a caveman in a block of ice. And for frozen items, they're going to have an extra condition of like needs to be in cold climate. And so you got to make sure you have like a freezer nearby that is keeping the temperature cool. And that freezer might break, so you got to have your janitors keeping maintenance going on to it. There is a fun trophy that I popped for an unfrozen caveman coming out and like destroying one of your donation stands.
Oh no!
Because that's so you get money for your museum by people paying for admission, or people going into like gift shops and buying merch, but also you throw donation stands around your exhibits, and basically each of them has like a little radius, and you'll see like, okay, this donation stand is connected to these 4 items. So when people go and look at those exhibits, they're going to be inspired to give, and they're going to go and like add money into the donation stand, and your security guard will go in and like clean up or like collect the money from the donations over time and stuff. But yeah, you'll have like maybe thieves will come in, like burglars are going to come in and try and vandalize your exhibits. They might try and steal exhibits. They might try and steal money. So you have to have security guards kind of keeping an eye out for them. And the higher, higher level of your museum, the more likely you are to entice burglars. There might be like little runs where like, oh, this this batch of burglars, this little syndicate has popped up in this in the vicinity, and their trait is they will sneak into your museum through the toilets. They will basically pop out of a toilet and they'll come in disguised as a guest, but they'll come in once a burglar has like identified the thing that they're going to try and steal. That's when they'll like change into their burglar guise and become much more apparent for your security to try and snatch them. But if you see somebody jump out of a toilet, you can go click on that guest, and there's a little button at the bottom that's like reveal thief, and you can click on that, and it's basically like rewarding your observance to basically be like, this is a guy as a thief. But if you select that on like, a general member of the populace, they're not going to be happy. It's going to significantly reduce their enjoyment because you've falsely accused a civilian of stealing stuff. But yeah, so there's like little mini events in the game like that kind of stuff. The different themes, prehistoric that I mentioned, botanical, so like finding plants, and a lot of them are like man-eating plants, or like one of them is like it's a plant that will eat a person and then it'll spit them back out as like a clown. And it's I forget the name. It's like the buffoon plant or something like that, or it has something to do with buffoon. And it's just kind of in the 2-point spirit of things, just silliness. Another one looked like it is a Venus flytrap style thing, but it looks like a lounge chair, and that's how it entices people to go sit in it, and then it eats them, but then spits them back out. You have another theme that is aquatic, so that's like your fish, and then also the Wetlantian artifacts, the ancient Wetlantians that lived in this vicinity under the sea, and will come visit your museum. But yeah, like the fish and sea creatures, you can send out an expedition to get a clownfish that will cheer up its environment, and you put them, instead of just laying them out freeform in the exhibit, you have to build an aquarium, and you populate the aquarium with like a filter to keep it clean. Depending on the type of fish you want to put in there, you can put like there's basically like a temperate aquarium that you can build, or a tropical aquarium, or a cold climate aquarium. So you can throw like a heater in there to make it tropical. You can throw a cooler in there to bring the temperature down for whatever the needs of the fish. You will get bigger fish that might be pescatarians, and they might eat other fish, like smaller fish. So you don't want to put you don't want to put a lionfish in with a clownfish, or that clownfish will die and get eaten by the lionfish. Or I uncovered fish that are basically like electric eels, and if you have electric eels in there with anybody else, they're electrifying the water, and so the other fish will die. So you have to be, careful. You can mix and match some fish in your tanks, but you might be better off creating separate tanks of aquariums. And the size of the aquarium that you build will dictate how many fish you can put in there. So if I build a fish or an aquarium that is like 8 fish big, I can put either 8 small fish in, or like a bigger fish might be the size of 2 fish or 3 fish. And so I can mix and match what I put into the aquariums. So that's the aquatic side of things. There is a supernatural museum where you can get like cursed items, like a haunted doll that it's one of my favorite items in the game, because it's haunted in that no matter how you have the cursor, the doll will always be looking at the camera. So as you like rotate the thing around, the doll's head rotates and it's just always looking at you.
That's creepy.
Fun stuff like that. Or there is a haunted like mannequin that's like one of those like art mannequin things, and it's basically like anytime it's off screen and then you come back to it, it has changed position. So like no real like tangible benefit or like tangible harm to you to have it in your museum, but it is like that's how they are haunted items. But you also get ghosts in the supernatural category of things. And much like aquariums, you will build a like poltergeist room that you have to kind of like house the ghost in, and the ghost is going to have certain requirements and requests that they want. Like, I want to live in a industrial age themed room, or I want to live in a natural room that has, you know, stones and grass instead of like hotel room attire, or you know, or an old Victrola or something like that. So you're kind of designing the environments for your exhibits around the needs of, or the needs or wants or theming of the exhibit. You also have the science theme, which is much more about like mechanical creations that you can build in a workshop, which is one of the the types. You can also build like your cargo items and stuff like that if you want to, you know, build an object that is like a survey scanner and will like increase the likelihood that you'll find something, you know, higher quality in one of your expeditions. You can build those in your workshop, or you can build things like the panoptictroller or something like, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like this will be like it is an item that can identify malicious intent. And so if, you know, a criminal in disguise comes within the vicinity of that thing, it'll basically like alert the security to that person and kind of like uncover them. And so it kind of has a practical element, but it is also an exhibit that you can put in your museum, and people will come and be interested in. And the more people that are interested in these items, the better versions of them that you can create. So you can create like the version 2 model or the version 3 model. There's also like a mulchomatic, where it's like, okay, you're creating something that you can throw a botanical exhibit into, and it will create mulch, which you can use to create other items. So you can kind of like, you're either going on expeditions for like the metal or cogs that you need for some of these mechanical exhibits, or you're getting them from basically sacrificing your other exhibits. You also, if you get like duplicates of exhibits, you can throw them into an analysis room that will basically like it'll destroy the exhibit in favor of giving you some money back. You'll also usually get like a perk that you can attach to another exhibit, or you will increase like the knowledge level of that particular exhibit. So if I've got an epic, a purple, of the disc fossils, and then I get like a regular one, I'm like, well, I don't want to display the regular one, so I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice the regular disc fossil, and that will increase it'll increase any other disc fossil that I have and become a better version of it. So the one that I already have out on display is now a better version because I've sacrificed and I've analyzed the lesser one. And then the last theme type is space, where you can get like mysterious like space artifacts or aliens, like alien artifacts. I want to say they're cheesians or something like that. It's basically like a cheese people playing off of the like moon cheese kind of vibes of things. The interesting thing that I've seen so far in the space one is like the space museum will start you out with like items keep appearing through portals in space around the museum site, and you basically have to send your science your staffers to like decipher what's going on there, and they'll have little symbols. So there will be like one that is a circle symbol, one that is a triangle symbol, and one that is a square symbol. And then you might find an artifact that has like a square and a triangle on it. And if you put that artifact in the vicinity of one of your square items, which end up being batteries, and a triangle battery, the square triangle item will light up and it will activate and basically increases that item's value or something like that. And so you're kind of like incentivized to like lay out your facility in favor of the optimal alignment of these specific artifacts to uncover deeper and deeper expeditions and stuff like that. Like the unlock specifications for certain things are going to be like, hey, find and activate this artifact. It's going to be, okay, I found that artifact, now how do I activate it? Oh, I gotta match the symbols up on it because I gotta get those different items in the mix. So cool stuff like that. And yeah, just it's a lot of fun. I've been playing. I started out playing the campaign mode, which basically incentivizes you to kind of switch between. The game has kind of 5 different museums to do as a starting point. Like the prehistoric one is kind of the initial one that you're going to be more or less tutorialized on. Then the next option that it recommends is usually going to be the aquatic one, where you're figuring out, okay, how do I build the aquariums, and then you might go back to the prehistoric one to get introduced to like, okay, now that you have like X number of stars across your museums, now you're ready to delve into adding botanical exhibits to this one. Let's go on some of those expeditions. And then there is another museum that is very much a like Luigi's Mansion style place for the supernatural stuff. You start on like a little small patch of land, but then you will, as you get to a certain star level, you will open up the haunted house nearby that has a lot of ghost activity therein. Then you have the science center, which is basically like an abandoned science facility that you are going in and like restoring and finding the pieces to build up your different science exhibits. Or the space one that's basically like, hey, we're pretty sure a UFO crash landed in like the trees in this this island. Go build a facility to like research what's going on with that UFO, and that's where you start uncovering these like little science batteries and the artifacts and stuff around that. So yeah, 5 different things. And then the campaign mode also has like what they call pop-up museums, which are basically going to be like a pre-built challenge map where it's like, okay, you want to go to this museum and the challenge is to catch this number of criminals. Like the exhibit is very popular and there are going to be constantly criminals kind of popping in. And so you are trying to catch criminals and also just get X number of money. And there's like a bronze level, gold, silver level, and a gold level of like the challenge thing. Or, hey, this pop-up is here to tell you and teach you about like the marketing gimmick, where you can basically run a marketing campaign that is targeted to specific exhibits or specific types or specific audience members. So if you want to invite families, you can run a specific marketing campaign targeting families, and families are going to have different, they're going to have parents, they're going to have the children.
Yeah. Okay.
And each different audience type has different wants and needs of, their trips to the exhibits. So yeah, you got like those little pop-up things. And then sandbox mode is, hey, you can, set your starting cash limit if you want to, just have a ton of fun and free reign. Like I set my sandbox start to like $2 million, which is the highest I could. And basically I've just been, building out each of the different facilities. And it's still, even in sandbox mode, you're still starting in each of those, like of the 5 starter museums. You're just not given as many straightforward, like, here are the quests to improve this museum specifically, or here's like the storyline that's going on with this museum. You're giving much more free reign in the sandbox mode. So yeah, that's 2 Point Museum. Any questions on this one? I don't know. I feel like I ramble a lot more on this one than the Pirate Yakuza.
The thing about it is, like, I have concepts and understanding of the Yakuza universe, right? Yeah. I have no idea about the 2 Point. I've never been a 2 Point hospital, morgue, space station, whatever they are. Those are your games. You really love them, and I love hearing about them. But yeah, it really is much more of a okay, all right. Yeah. You're like cheese people, as like cheese aliens, like. Okay, all right. Cheese aliens are in the game. Cool. Yep. Cool. Yep. Don't know what they look like. Have no idea the concept of it, but I'm guessing they're goofy because that's the art style.
Yep. So yeah, the art style for these games is always like Wallace and Gromit-esque.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, these look like Wallace and Gromit-esque guys with like cheese, and they maybe got like some little antennas and stuff like that.
Man, as long as you're enjoying them, and I know other people enjoy the hell out of them too. So like, support it.
It's fun.
I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum about this.
Yeah. I played through the campaign mode and got kind of each of the 5 museums up to like 2, maybe 3 stars. And at that point, it's getting into like, okay, like now you got to be bringing in this much money per month. And I'm just kind of running into some walls on some of that. So that was where I hopped off and started doing the sandbox mode. And I've reached kind of the same point in the sandbox mode where I'm like, okay, if I want to progress further, the objective is unlock 4 stars across your different museums. And I'm like, I go to each of the different museums. I'm like, all right, I can maybe squeeze 1 or 2 more out of this before I'm really like, there are 1 or 2 of the museums where I'm like bleeding so much money because I've got way too many staff people to manage, and I'm just not bringing in enough money. But yeah, it's fun. I mentioned before we started recording, I got to the point with it last night where I was like, all right, I'm gonna step away from this and I'm gonna go ahead and download and pick up Monster Hunter Wilds. So I'm starting to jump into that, but I've still got 2-Point Museum on the console, and I'll probably jump back and forth between that in the next week or two. But it's definitely been a lot of fun. I would say on the on the scale, I would give it an 8 probably on that nerdy site, and going back to Yakuza, I'd probably give that one an 8 as well. Great experiences, great times with it.
Nice.
Yeah, just overall a lot of fun, especially if you were into like the sim management kind of game. There's a lot of fun to be had here. The expedition piece of it, that is like, okay, you're controlling, how many, like you're determining what exhibits you're sending your staff off into, and how you're, kind of identifying what, I will go into the same expedition over and over again, because the more you do an expedition, the like higher likelihood you get a pristine exhibit. And so I'll kind of do an expedition until I get all of the pristine rewards, and then I'm like, okay, now I don't really need to do this one too much anymore, and so then I can move on to the next one. But it's a mix and match of finding the new exhibits versus replacing the old ones. But yeah, it's a great time, having a lot of fun with it. It's another one could be in my game of the year at the end of the year, depending on what else hits. This is very much a like gameplay ass game compared to story. There's also, like these games always have like a occasional like radio interludes, or like interviews where characters are talking about things in the broader like 2-Point world, or sometimes they're like responding to things that are happening at your museum specifically in terms of like the storyline of things. But it's largely just like silly tongue-in-cheek PA announcements of like, hey, you need more janitors, you should get more janitors, or something like that. That's basically like helping you guide through what you might need to, focus on. It's very much in that like SimCity-esque kind of camp in that regard. So yeah, shout out to 2-Point Museum. New fun iteration in the series. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me here chat about all these games.
Absolutely. Happy to.
You can follow Cameron at revkebit.bsky.social. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, we just had an awesome That D Plus Show episode about Daredevil Born Again. Really got into a lot of fun topics about that, and kind of they're talking about a little bit from the Netflix Marvel era and how it's kind of colliding with the current Disney Plus Marvel era. So a lot of fun discussion. That's a very fun discussion that we had. Among many other topics that we talked about on that show. So go check it out.
Yep. You can follow me at trevorjstarkey.bsky.social, and I will give a shout out to, in addition to the Daredevil Born Again episode, this coming week's episode of That D Plus Show will be about Moana 2, as that drops in a couple days.
You'll be watching it for the first time.
I'll be watching it for the first time. Yep, I did not go see it in theaters. So.
And if I watch it, it'll be probably for like the 8th time, because I got a niece that loves Moana.
But Moana 2 specifically, have you watched a lot of?
Yeah. Oh, I've seen more. I've seen Moana 1, and since Eleanor's been born, I've seen Moana 1
I get Moana 1 a lot, but Moana 2, like, has the family just already bought it on like digital?
Oh no, I was joking about like how often I've seen it. Like they have it on digital. Yeah, I've seen it like twice since it came out. That's
because the fact that we're not doing it until this week is because it hasn't come to Disney Plus until this week.
No, they have it on digital. Like John got it on digital and has it on their family server. So the kids watch it, and like whenever Thursday nights come around, if we need her to stay occupied, we throw out Moana, and then Frozen became a thing, but now she's back on Moana.
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, like the first Moana, watched a lot, enjoyed a lot. Very much a fun time.
Spoilers: Moana 1 is better than Moana 2.
Yeah, yeah. That's not really a surprise, and that vibes with everything I thought about. But yeah, it was basically like the reason I didn't go see it was because I knew kind of the history of like Moana 2 starting as a show, then getting turned into a movie kind of late in the game. I was like, I don't know how well that's going to vibe. And there were just enough other things. I was like, yeah, instead I'm just going to go see Wicked a third time in theaters because I'm going to enjoy that experience a little bit more. But yeah, Moana 2 finally coming to Disney Plus this week, so we will chat about it on this week's That D Plus show. So stay tuned for that. And then yeah, next week's That Nerdy Site show, I will probably have some thoughts on Monster Hunter Wilds. Cameron will probably have played some more Chrono Cross, and we can chat about that or anything else that might come up this week. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.